This is the meta Titan build for Season 22. So good, so strong. This is the build that I'm going to be taking into Crota for the day 1 raid race. It's that powerful. I know this build won't let me down. Bungie just came out with this new aspect, Banner of War, and we previously covered a video where we melted a dungeon boss with it. And so now I've had the ability to go through and test all the different aspects and fragments and determine what the best build overall is, the best combination of all these different ingredients. And so let's go through it. First up, we're going to be using the Towering Barricade instead of the Rally Barricade. Previously, we were using Rally Barricade, and the reason why is because we're using Dranger's Lash, so that way we could just send a ton of suspending blasts out onto enemies. Now that we're not using that anymore, we're just going to be using Towering Barricade because it just offers a lot more utility in PvE. You can block off a direction, so that way ads can't push you. So we're definitely be using Towering Barricade. Obviously, you don't get too many options in terms of your melee, you just have to use Frenzy Blade. For the grenade, you do get a few options though, and we're definitely going with Shackle. You'll find this to be especially potent against big targets like wyverns and stuff. If you're doing the new activity, you'll see that they get suspended a ton. So Shackle is definitely the play for the grenade. Although I will say Grapple can be fun, and Threadlings do have some utility to them. I think that Shackle has the best, especially when you're doing challenging endgame content overall. Then of course we're going to go to the aspects. You have to start with Banner of War. This is defeat a target with a melee attack, finisher, or sword to raise a Banner of War that pulses with energy, periodically healing nearby allies and increasing melee and sword damage. Now obviously a lot of people like to proc this with swords. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about Stronghold and Lament or another sword, and it is very strong with a sword. But for this build and what I'm trying to use personally, I'm trying to use Syntheseps so we can buff that melee damage to be astronomically more powerful. We're utilizing a variety of other things to make it so much more powerful, and I personally believe that Syntheseps is the better option over the sword options. However, I will say that the sword options are also really good. I'm not saying that they're bad by any means, just not as good in my opinion. Now obviously there's a variety of different ways you can proc the Banner of War. If we're not rocking a sword, which I'm not in this build, then you either have to get a melee kill or you have to get a finisher kill, and I'm going to purposely be trying to get finishers on enemies, just getting them weak and hitting the finisher to get the Banner of War raised, so that way I can get my increase to melee damage and get those health pulses going, get a bunch of kills, so that way it stacks up to 4 times. So that's the first part of Banner of War, is getting finishers. The second part is going to be into the Fray. This is going to be the aspect that pairs best with this. Destroying a tangle or casting your super grants Woven Mail for nearby allies. We're going to be making tangles through a variety of different sources, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And that Woven Mail is going to give us that damage resistance, so that way we can stay alive. It's 55% damage resistance in PvE, which is a ton. That just gives you crazy survivability, and we know that Bungie is trying to tune Crota's End, the world's first raid race, to make it as difficult as possible. They literally posted a tweet saying that players are going to be squishier and enemies are going to hit harder, and there will be more shields. So you'll definitely want survivability, and that's what Woven Mail is going to give you, and that's what we're going to tie into our build here. Destroying that tangle is going to give us that Woven Mail, and we'll have a few other sources as well. And now we have, while you have Woven Mail, Weapon Final Blows, create a tangle. So you can see there, you get a tangle from killing things with a weapon, and then you destroy the tangle and it gives you Woven Mail, so you have a nice loop between those alone. Next up we have Thread of Generation, dealing damage, generates grenade energy. Now this has been nerfed substantially since it originally came out. If you remember the videos we posted when this thing first came out, this thing was absolutely busted. It has been nerfed, but it's still very strong, and it just helps overall because you're going to be dealing a ton of damage when you're playing challenging content, and if you can get more shackle grenades from that, it's always nice. The next bit is going to be Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail, and we'll get our Orbs of Power from 2 different sources, from weapon kills, especially if you're using hand cannons in challenging content, and then we'll also get them from melee kills as well, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And then lastly, we have damaging targets with a tangle, grants melee energy. This is perfect. This ties into our ability to get our melees back as fast as possible, because that's kind of an issue that you're going to find when using this build, which is that you're going to go through your melee, all 3 of your melees super fast, and you want to regenerate them back so that way you can do those more powerful melees, because that's literally, you're building everything into your berserker melees and how powerful they are. So getting your melee energy back as fast as possible is imperative, and I also highly recommend to rock as much strength as possible. So that's everything for the subclass. Now let's go over all the different mods that I have on my armor to make this build as ridiculously powerful as it can possibly be. Going through the helmet mods, the first mod that I have on is Solar Siphon, and the reason why I'm using this is because I'm using an energy solar hand cannon. This is my hand cannon of choice, Zali's Bane with explosive payload and 1 for all with minor spec. This thing is so unbelievably powerful now, with a 20% increase to red bars and 80% damage increase to majors. This thing hits so hard. It's crazy to see how fast you can melt majors with a primary ammo weapon. I love my Zali's Bane. If I'm not using this, then I'm very often using Sunshot, so that pairs in perfectly with Solar Siphon. Siphon. For this exact build though, I will be using Tractor a lot, so I'm not able to put the exotic slot on my energy for Sunshot, so I ended up going with Zali's Bane. So we got Solar Siphon on. For the next mod, we have Hands On, gain bonus super energy on melee kills. Obviously we're running around, the entire build is set around us getting melee kills, so we're gonna put Hands On. That way we can regain as much super energy as possible from those melee kills. And then the next mod, I just wanted to fill this in, and so I decided to throw on Powerful Friends, kind of just a filler mod more than anything. Now we're on to my gauntlets. Now first up, I do have Solar Loader on here, and that's what I was using just because Zali's Bane is such a weird hand cannon. It reloads so slow, I can't handle the animation of it. It feels like it's bugged or something. So I personally have to use Solar Loader whenever I'm using Zali's Bane, but also I like it when I'm using Sunshot as well. So I personally spec into using that because the one downside of using a hand cannon all the time is having to reload it so frequently. So I want to reload really, really fast. And of course we got to use Fastball so that way our grenades go exactly where I want them to go. And then lastly is Heavy Handed, so that way our melee final blows will create those orbs of power, which will feed us Woven Mail and armor charges and various other things. So that way we have that perfect synergy looping around. For the chest piece, of course, like we've mentioned many times before, you can use any 3 damage resist mods that you want. However, considering how close range we are getting to everyone, I would highly recommend a melee damage resist. Those proximity hits will count more, and melee damage resist will probably do more for you than any of the others. Now moving on down to the boots, the first mod I put on is Recuperation. This is a mod I use on almost all of my builds except for Void because you have Devour. Recuperation is just so strong. A big chunk of health given to you, especially when you're low health, is a lifesaver. If you use the other mods, you start health regeneration, but it can often be interrupted by enemies shooting you, especially if you're doing challenging content where there's just like a million enemies shooting at you from every which direction. So I personally choose Recommendation, especially when doing challenging stuff. The next mod is just Solar Weapon Surge. You could use whatever you want here. I just want my hand cannon to hit a little bit harder. And then the last one will go with Invigoration. You could also just use a Surge here as well, but this does help reduce your melee cooldown when you're picking up orbs. And considering we're making so many different orbs from both our melee kills and our hand cannon kills, and picking those up so that way we can get Woven Mail, I figured this will tie in a little bit better than a Surge. Lastly, onto our class item, we're rocking Double Outreach, reduce your melee cooldown when using your class ability. Again, this is just to tie everything back in so we can get as many melees as possible. Every time I put my Titan wall down, I get some melee energy, so that way I can keep that loop going, and also get a ton from tossing those tangles. And then lastly, I like Proximity Ward because, like I said, I'm trying to get those finishers to start my Banner of War, and sometimes when you're using your finishers and you're in a pile of enemies, they can kill you. So I like Proximity Ward so I can stay alive, because as soon as I get that Banner of War, I know that I'm getting that health regeneration, and I know my melees will be super overcharged powerful. So I really like Proximity Ward to tie in to complete this build. As far as stats go, I would recommend 100 Resilience, 100 Discipline, and 100 Strength. Right now, loadouts are bugged, so I'm not able to save this loadout, but I will give you the dim link down below, so that way you can save it. And whenever Bungie gets those loadouts fixed, then you'll probably save it as one of your top 10 for the season, because this is going to be one of the best loadouts for the entirety of Season 22. But that's not everything for this loadout. I highly recommend to pair with it a 1-2 punch shotgun. All you have to do is land every pellet of this shotgun, and you'll get a massive boost to your melee damage, and that does proc with that Berserker melee, so you'll notice that I'm able to one-hit kill various different bosses. And if I can't kill the boss, it just chunks their health like crazy, especially when I debuff them with the Tractor Cannon, and that does work for your melee. So I'll debuff with Tractor Cannon, swap to the kinetic shotgun, hit them with a 1-2 punch, and then I'll begin to hit them with those melees. Those Frenzy Blades, I'll hit them with all 3 of those. Technically, the best sequence of doing this is to fire one 1-2 punch shotgun, then melee twice, then you want to fire another 1-2 punch shotgun, and then melee your third and final melee. And then after that, you would then fire another 1-2 punch shotgun, and then pop your super, and then get all the different damage from using your Blade Fury super. I don't know if the 1-2 punch lasts long enough through the super animation, but that's what I've been told is the best, and it might be a very tight, very small window there, but if you're fast enough, you might be able to pull off that extra 1-2 punch damage. So I believe that is the absolute most optimal melee DPS you can do with Berserker Titan this season, Season 22. So that's the meta build. That's what I'm using in Crota for day 1, and that's what I recommend all you Titan mains out there to use. I know that Solar Titan is so much fun, and Sunspots are super nice and really, really strong. I'm not taking anything against those, but Woven Mail with that survivability is so nice, and the Banner of War feeding and healing your teammates and making your melees super powerful paired with Syntheseps is just too good of a build to overlook. I promise you, if you actually use everything that I have on right now, if you equip all of this stuff and you go into some challenging content, you'll see just how powerful it is, and you'll probably end up liking it and not wanting to use anything else, because that's where I'm at right now, Season 22. I don't even want to use my Hunter or my Warlock. I literally just want to use this build all day, every day, because it's so much fun. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed, smash the like button, and click on the screen here to watch another video from this channel. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.